Okay, picture this. You settle in, blanket's perfect, snacks are ready, you hit play on that show you've been, like, dying to watch, and then
Uh,
that scream.
yep.
The one that just screams error, or it's buffering endlessly, or maybe just nothing at all. And that immediate gut punch, right? Is Netflix down?
Ah, yes. The modern day test pattern, basically.
Yeah.
It's a surprisingly common frustration, isn't it? Especially given how much streaming is just part of how we unwind now.
Exactly. And that immediate feeling of panic, is it my Wi-Fi finally giving up the ghost? Or has the streaming king kind of temporarily lost its crown? That uncertainty is almost the worst part.
It really is. And that's exactly why we dug into the source material you sent over,
Yeah.
all focused on these Netflix outages.
Right. So our mission for this deep dive is pretty clear. Let's unpack what actually happens when Netflix goes dark. We're going to look at why it happens, help you figure out, how to tell if it's you or them,
Mhm.
explore what you can actually do about it, and kind of put it all in perspective based on the info we've got.
And this deep dive is really for you, our listener. To cut through that confusion and get you quickly up to speed on this, let's face it, pretty common modern headache. So let's jump into that first moment of digital dread.
Okay, so you see the error. Before you start, like, ripping cords out of the wall, the absolute first, most crucial step is figuring out, is this my setup or is it a wider Netflix problem? What are the key tools the sources mentioned for this?
That distinction is, yeah, absolutely key. The material we looked at points to several really effective ways to check pretty quickly if the issue's just in your house or if Netflix itself is having difficulties.
And step one isn't just mashing the refresh button like a maniac, I take it.
Probably not the most efficient first step, no. The sources suggest checking a third-party status site first, something like Downdetector.com. What's interesting is how these sites work. They track reports from users in real time.
Ah, okay.
So if suddenly thousands of people are reporting Netflix problems from all over, you'll see this huge spike on their chart. And it's a quick visual check that says, okay, probably not just me.
The collective groan visualized. If everyone's is having a bad streaming night, you know you're in good or bad company.
Precisely. Another reliable method that was mentioned is checking Netflix's official channels, like their Twitter or X account now. If it's a major outage, they often post updates there to let people know what's going on.
Right. And maybe the simplest test of all, just trying another app.
Yeah, that's often the quickest way to narrow it down. If you can fire up YouTube or Disney Plus Art or whatever, and it streams perfectly fine, but Netflix is still stuck, well, the evidence starts pointing pretty strongly towards Netflix, not your internet.
It really is that moment of collective digital panic, isn't it? You see the error and you just know thousands, maybe millions of others are hitting Google right then with, is Netflix down?
Exactly that feeling. It just highlights how, connected we are through these platforms. And the sources actually mentioned specific times this happened on a massive scale, like that big outage in 2021. Remember that one? It apparently lasted nearly 12 hours.
12 hours, geez. In this age of instant everything, that feels like, well, forever. What did the sources say about the chaos that caused?
Oh yeah, a 12-hour outage for a service like Netflix is a pretty big deal. It really just highlights how dependent a lot of us are on having that consistent access for entertainment or just routine. The impact definitely goes beyond just being annoyed when it's gone for that long.
Okay, so we know how to check if it's down, but the next obvious question is why? I mean, how does a platform as huge and seemingly solid as Netflix still end up going dark sometimes? What did the material say about the technical reasons?
It does seem a bit counterintuitive for such a tech giant, doesn't it? But the sources break it down into a few main things. One of the big ones they mentioned is server overload.
Right. Like too many people trying to get through the digital door at the same time.
That's a good way to think about it, yeah. Yeah. Imagine when a super popular new season drops, Stranger Things or something. You might have millions of people worldwide hitting play almost simultaneously. Even with their massive setup, that sudden huge spike in traffic can just overwhelm the systems, leads to slowdowns or even crashes.
So peak demand is a real stress test. What else did the sources bring up?
Another really critical factor is their reliance on cloud providers. This is important. Netflix doesn't own and run all its own hardware. They lean heavily on cloud services, mainly Amazon Web Services, AWS.
Ah, okay. So they're essentially building their house on Amazon's land, digitally speaking.
Kind of, yeah. They build their service on top of Amazon's vast infrastructure. So what that means is if AWS has a problem maybe in a specific region or something bigger, it can directly affect Netflix's ability to stream. It's a dependency they manage, but it's still there.
That's fascinating. Their uptime is partly tied to someone else's system health? Were there other, maybe more localized issues mentioned?
Yes, regional outages came up too. Sometimes the issue isn't Netflix's core system or AWS globally, but it's limited to a specific country. Or it might even be down to problems with a particular internet service provider in that country affecting how users connect to Netflix.
So the digital pipes between you and the cloud matter as well.
Absolutely. And then there's the classic tech problem. Updates gone wrong. I mean, a system like Netflix is incredibly complex, right? They're constantly rolling out updates, fixes, new features. That's essential, but it also carries risk. Sometimes a bit of bad code in a new update can accidentally break something important.
The old fix one thing, break another scenario.
Exactly. And while it seems less common, the sources also mention hacks and cyber attacks. They pointed to an incident back in 2016 where hackers actually targeted Netflix and managed to cause an outage for a few hours.
Wow. So it's this mix of managing huge demand, relying on third-party giants like AWS, navigating the complexities of the global internet itself, the risks of just keeping the software running, and outside threats. That's a lot of plates to keep spinning.
It is. And it helps explain why even a company as advanced as Netflix isn't totally immune to these kinds of outages.
Okay, so given all those potential failure points, how often are we actually talking about this happening? Is a big Netflix blackout a weekly thing or much rarer? What did the sources say about frequency and how long they usually last?
Yeah, the data in the sources puts it into perspective. These major widespread outages, ones affecting lots of people, they're not happening every day or even every week. It's more on the scale of, say, a few times a year.
Okay, that's actually less frequent than maybe the panic suggests sometimes.
Right, it's important context. But the sources also made clear that smaller glitches, maybe issues localized to just one area or brief buffering problems, those are definitely more common. And while most outages get fixed pretty quickly, often, within an hour,
Hmm.
the material did note the really severe ones, like that 2021 example, can take up to half a day to fully resolve.
Half a day still feels like a long time when you're mid-binge. Did the sources happen to compare Netflix's track record to other streaming services?
They did, actually. And interestingly, despite the noise Netflix outages make, the sources suggested Netflix is generally considered more reliable than some competitors. They specifically called out HBO Max now, just Max having a really rough launch phase with lots of crashes.
Huh. So while it's super frustrating when it goes down, maybe Netflix's overall uptime is actually pretty good compared to the field.
That's the impression the sources gave, yeah. But even with good reliability overall, certain events still cause those high-profile struggles that really stick in people's minds. The sources highlighted the issues when Stranger Things Season 4 dropped.
Oh, I remember the chatter around that. It wasn't necessarily a total blackout for everyone, but loads of people reported problems buffering, trouble loading episodes, especially right when it launched. That's prime is Netflix down. Meme time.
Exactly. That specific case shows how even like partial issues during peak demand for something huge can feel like a major outage to a massive number of users, and it instantly creates that shared experience, that online commentary.
Okay, so let's say you've seen the error, you've done your checks, you've confirmed it's not just your router having a moment. What do you actually do when Netflix is genuinely down? What are the practical steps the sources suggest?
Right, before you totally throw in the towel, the sources do suggest a few basic troubleshooting things on your end. Things that might still fix it, even if Downdetector is showing a spike.
Like what? Besides hitting refresh 87 times?
Well, the absolute classic,
Huh.
restarting your router. It sounds almost too simple, right? But a surprising number of connection issues just clear up with a quick power cycle of your home network gear. Always worth a try.
They'll turn it off and on again. Can't hurt.
Another good one is trying a different device. If Netflix isn't working on your TV, grab your phone or a tablet or hop on a computer. See if it works there. It helps figure out if the problem is with the whole service, your network, or maybe just that one specific device or app.
Ah, isolating the variable. Good thinking.
And lastly, just quickly check if there's an update for the Netflix app itself on whatever device you're using. Sometimes an older version of the app can cause weird issues that look like an outage, even if the service itself is fine for others.
Okay, solid checks. But if you've done all that, and the status sites and maybe even Netflix's own Twitter confirm it is down regionally or globally, what are the, let's call them alternative activities the sources sometimes humorously suggested?
Ah, yes. The great screen goes dark void. Well, the most obvious one, if you have other subscriptions, is just firing up another streaming service.
Assuming your streaming portfolio is diversified, yes.
Indeed. But the sources also threw in some more, let's say, nostalgic or maybe even radical options. One was actually digging out a physical DVD.
A physical DVD? You mean like those shiny discs from the before times?
The very same, a little reminder of simpler, less cloud-reliant entertainment. But perhaps the most radical suggestion the sources mentioned when faced with no Netflix was the idea of,
Oh.
well, talking to your family.
Whoa, hold on now. Let's not get crazy. Talking to family. That sounds intense.
It certainly puts our level of reliance into perspective, doesn't it? A bit jarring.
Speaking of reliance and those reactions, the sources shared some great little stories from listeners about their own outage experiences. They really capture the human side of it all, sometimes funny, sometimes just frustrating.
They really do. They make it more relatable than just talking about servers. There was that story about the person who got so mad they called their internet provider, basically yelling about the internet being broken.
Oh, no.
Only for the support person to calmly point out that their bill hadn't actually been paid.
Oof. The immediate backtracking required there. That's a story you probably only tell on yourself later, with a wince.
Definitely. And then there was the Netflix down party anecdote. Friends had planned to watch something together, Netflix went kaput, so everyone just showed up anyway with their own laptops and watched their own downloaded shows. But, like, together in the same room.
That's kind of wonderfully absurd, isn't it? It shows this commitment to the ritual of watching together, even if the platform fails. Digital solidarity, maybe?
Something like that, yeah. And my personal favorite, which I think says a lot about how automatic this stuff is now, was the person who just kept rewatching the same episode of The Office over and over.
Yeah.
Without even realizing Netflix had actually come back online.
Wow. Just autopilot streaming engaged. It's amazing how ingrained that habit is, isn't it? To the point where the fix might go unnoticed. These stories really hit home. It's not just tech failures. It's about disrupted plans, weird coping mechanisms, and sometimes just pure habit.
Yeah, they highlight that it's not just abstract tech stuff. It's about interrupted evenings, changed routines, and finding unexpected ways to fill the time. We're just missing the fact that the time can be filled again.
So bringing it back to the bigger picture then, what do these outages and how people react kind of tell us about where Netflix stands in the whole streaming battleground going forward? What was the take in the sources?
Well, the material definitely acknowledged that, despite these hiccups, Netflix is still widely seen as the king of streaming. Their subscriber numbers, the sheer size of their library, it's still dominant.
They built the biggest castle, and it's still mostly standing.
Pretty much. But the sources were also realistic. They pointed out that competitors are absolutely gaining ground. And things like recurring outages, well, they were listed as one potential factor that could make people think about jumping ship.
Right.
Along with other things we hear about, like the password sharing crackdown or prices going up.
So they're still on top, but things like reliability, price, account rules, they all factor into whether people stay loyal long term.
Absolutely. It's the whole package, content, features, and reliability that needs to stay strong. But here's the interesting point the sources really leaned into at the end of this section. Despite all that the competition, the price points, and the occasional outage, the prediction wasn't that Netflix is doomed. Far from it. Yeah, the observation was that even when people get frustrated in the moment, they tend to come right back to Netflix almost as soon as it's working again.
That immediate return,
Right.
that says a lot, doesn't it? Suggests either really deep loyalty or maybe just the power of habit and convenience is incredibly strong.
Probably a mix of both, right?
Yeah.
The sheer amount of stuff on there, the interface people know, it makes it the default choice for so many, even if it sometimes stumbles.
Okay, so we've gone from that initial oh no moment when the screen blanks out. We've armed you with ways to check if it's you or them, dug into the why behind it all.
Explored the tech reasons, yeah.
Put the frequency in context, talked about what you can actually do, including maybe talking to relatives.
The radical option.
And shared some really relatable stories about the whole experience.
We've tried to pull out the key insights from all that source material to give you, the listener, a really solid handle on this whole Netflix outage thing.
And it does leave us with a kind of provocative thought, right? Stemming directly from those final points in the sources about how quickly people come back. If Netflix, even with outages, even with password crackdowns and rising costs, stays this dominant and we all just flood back in the second it's fixed, what does that really say about our reliance on these platforms?
Yeah.
About our willingness to put up with bumps in the road for that constant stream of content? And maybe more personally, what does happen to your own habits, your own evening, maybe even your interactions with people physically around you when that screen unexpectedly goes dark? It's definitely something to chew on next time you see that dreaded buffering wheel. Or Worse, the actual error scream.
Yeah, maybe reflect on your own digital routines.
Mm.
Are they as resilient as Netflix itself seems to be?